All right, old school NBA fans, self-researched NBA facts. Got another video for you. As always, thanks to anybody who watches my videos, subscribes to my channel. I really appreciate it. This video here is kind of a follow-up to the video I did last week about this whole watered-down era thing. It sparked pretty big debate in the comments. And one person in particular, Politicus Rex, says, oh, nobody even understands what watered down means. No one's ever been able to give it to me in a very coherent, clear way that made sense. The win totals that some of these teams got in the early 90s, it was a few. They'd get anywhere between like half a win up to maybe 3 or 4. I think the 92 Bulls benefited the most in that little era there. They benefited, I think, 4 wins if they would have just played non-expansion teams. So they would have been a 63-win team instead of a 67-win team. No problem. I can admit that. They got extra wins because there was expansion teams. However, the issue I have with somebody like a Politicus Rex is the cherry picking. Now, he tried to say that he had the records of what the Bulls did versus expansion teams all the way till like 96, like 95, 96. You're like 6, 7, 8 years into it. That just doesn't fly. Number one, you did not mention the playoffs. 95, Jordan played against Charlotte and Orlando. Well, in those 12 games, he went 6-6. So you didn't mention that, though, did you? Nope, because it doesn't fit the narrative. Always a narrative. So what I did was I went back and looked at this alleged sweet spot. Like there was too few teams in the 60s, and then the 70s, which I say easily by far is the most watered down, at least with the amount of teams they had, because they had the ABA running concurrently with the NBA. Today it's watered down for a different reason, because they allow all these teenagers in the NBA. I think I did a video on that about how, it's boys against men in some cases. It was just straight boys it was just straight men in the 90s. That's what it was. The very youngest players in the 90s was Chris Webber, Jason Kidd, like your cream of the crop players. Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant. These are the straight out of high school type players. Sean Kemp. These were the guys. They were the youngest in the league. These are future top 75 players we're talking about. But anyway, so when I went back and looked, and I compared 1980s, the year 1980 versus the 1990 Western Conference, because I mentioned that in the comments and didn't hear a response back. So this is what I looked up. All right. So in 1980, this is the player on every team in the West who was the sixth man, since this is a direct correlation to the accusation of that once they did expansion, it weakened the benches, okay? Didn't really do nothing to the expansion teams because they needed years to build up and that kind of thing. But, yeah, it didn't do much for the expansion teams. They need a few years, to get draft picks, that kind of thing, whatever. Yeah, everybody beat up on them. But it was marginal compared to people acting like they got inflated like 12 wins, 15 wins. Like, that's just not what happened. You know what I mean? But, so this is all the sixth man of all the teams in the Western Conference in 1980. Because this is what the accusation is. It weakened the benches. So let's take a look. 1980, this is the year before they expanded in 1981, one team, Dallas Mavericks. Okay, so 1980, this was probably one of the best years for the West. They had their top 4 teams were 49-win Milwaukee, 55-win Phoenix, 56-win Seattle, and 60-win Lakers. That was pretty much one of the best years because the conference just wasn't great. But according to people like Politicus Rex, the 90s was just, watered down, blah, blah. Let's take a look. 1980, bench players, every team in the West. On Milwaukee, because Milwaukee was in the West in 1980, The sixth man, and the way I did it was I just did 60 minutes played. Now, if there was a player who played like 20 games or 30 games, I just skipped him right out, went to the next guy. Because that's stupid. Like Alex English only played like 28 games or something. But he wasn't there all year. He played like a third of a season. So the actual sixth man of who was there for the majority of the season. In Milwaukee, it was a guy named Kent Benson. He never made any All-Stars, All-League, nothing like that. He averaged 8.8 points, 5.9 rebounds. Okay, whatever. Kansas City Kings had a guy named Bill Robinson. 11.4 points, 6.5 rebounds. All right, not bad. About what you expect from a bench player. Denver had a guy named George Johnson. Now, he was actually a pretty decent player. He gave you 10.2 points, 7.8 rebounds. Chicago had a guy named Kobe Dietrich. None of these guys ever got any all-leagues, all-stars, none of that at any time in their career. Kobe Dietrich averaged 6.9 points per game, 4.6 rebounds per game. Just typical sixth man, whatever, right? Nothing special. Utah had Tom Boswell, and I think that guy might have been on the Boston in the 70s, played a decent role. 11.5 points per game, 5.4 rebounds. Okay, and most of these guys are big men. The Lakers, it was Michael Cooper, Hall of Famer. He won Defensive Player of the Year. He's in the Hall of Fame because of his defense and winning all those championships. I think he's nowhere near a Hall of Famer. But he was the sixth man, giving you 8.8 points, 2.8 rebounds, and 2.7 assists. Okay, but he was known for his, really good defense against the best wing player on the other team. Fine, no problem. Seattle had a guy named Fred Brown, downtown Freddie Brown. 12 points, 2.2 assists. He was a one-time All-Star. Actually, he was a pretty good player. Phoenix had a guy named Mike Bratz. 8.5 points per game, 2.7 assists. Portland had Dave Twardzik, 8.5 points, 4.1 assists. San Diego Clippers had a guy named Bingo Smith. I remember him, played for Cleveland, and I don't remember, I just remember the name. Bingo Smith, I think he played for Cleveland in the 70s. Well, he was given 11.7 points per game, 3.5 rebounds. Not bad. And Golden State had JoJo White. He won 2 championships with Boston. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was 33 years old, which, out of his prime, but still, he was given 9.9 points, 3.1 assists. So, okay, whatever. So, obviously, the 90s West has just got to be pathetic compared to the 80s West, because that's what the whole argument is, right? Let's take a look. In the 90s, the sixth man for every team in the West, and a lot of these names are going to be familiar to you. San Antonio, it was David Wingate. 6.8 points, 2.7 assists. He was okay. He was like a bench player for Seattle later, played the Bulls in the 96 finals. He was okay, whatever. Utah had Thurl Bailey. Thurl Bailey was a pretty good, solid player. He averaged 14.2 points and 5 rebounds a game. That's really good for your sixth man. The Dallas Mavericks had Adrian Dantley. This is a guy who won multiple scoring titles. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was giving you 14.7 points, 3.8 rebounds as your sixth man. Denver, it was Walter Davis, another Hall of Famer, averaging 17.5 points per game, 2.6 rebounds. I'd say that's pretty good. Houston had a guy named John Lucas. He was all right, 5.8 points per game, 4.9 assists. He averaged 19.1 minutes, so he wasn't playing a ton of minutes. Minnesota, the expansion team. Sam Mitchell, giving you 12.7 points and 5.8 rebounds. It actually isn't that bad. He was a coach later for Minnesota. That's pretty good from your sixth man in 1990. Charlotte, it was Del Curry. He was in the expansion draft. He didn't even start for Charlotte. I think he was like the number 1 pick on Charlotte's expansion draft. He was 25 years old, off the bench, giving you 16 points per game, a 92.3% free throw shooter. He was top 5 in sixth man of the year 5 times. So he was a really good bench player. The Lakers, surprise, surprise, had Michael Cooper coming off the bench his last season. Hall of Famer. 6.4 points per game, 2.8 rebounds, 2.7 assists. Just to recap, what was Michael Cooper doing back in 1980? 8.8 points, 2.7 rebounds, 2.7 assists. The exact same amount of rebounds, the exact same amount of assists. He was giving you 2.4 more points a game. That's it. So Cooper was actually needed more in 1980 Lakers than 1990 Lakers. And everybody talks about how, oh, the Lakers were old. They weren't Showtime anymore. Got some fool today talking about it. You're mistaken. All right? Cooper was his last season. Kareem was done after about 87. I mean, 88 he was okay. But you look at Vlade Divas' stats, especially in the finals, compare him to what Kareem did in 88 and 89. Yeah. Portland had Clifford Robinson. 9.1 points, 3.8 rebounds. Now, he was a pretty good player. Later on, he was a one-time All-Star, two-time All-Defense, one-time Sixth Man of the Year. And Portland also had on their bench Drazen Petrovic. He was 9th in minutes played. 3 years later, this guy's All-NBA. Phoenix had Eddie Johnson. Eddie Johnson giving you 16.9 points a game, 3.8 rebounds, 91.7% from the free throw line. He finished 3rd for Sixth Man of the Year. He was a good player, very good bench player, great sixth man. Seattle had Sedale Threatt, pretty solid player if you look up his career. 11.4 points, 3.3 assists, 50.6% from the field. Man, they must have been really thin. You know who else was on their bench? Seattle in 1990? Look it up. Dana Barros, he made an all-star team. He was three-point leader a couple years, I believe. Avery Johnson, ever heard of him? How about Sean Kemp? These guys are deeper on the bench. And the next season in 91, then they draft Gary Payton. This team was pretty much loaded. All right, Golden State, who was their sixth man? Nobody special, just a Hall of Famer. Now, he wouldn't be a Hall of Famer for me. He was a European Hall of Famer. Sarunas Marciulionis, pretty good player, good shooter. 12.1 points, 51.9% from the field. That's pretty good, though, for your sixth man. And then for the Clippers, you got Tom Garrick, averaging 7 points a game, 4 assists a game. Ron Harper got hurt, or it would have been Danny Manning. He would have been your sixth man. He's a pretty good player, all-star, all that. But Ron Harper got hurt when he's playing on the Clippers. All right. Now, in Sacramento, last team, their sixth man was Vinny Del Negro. Played on the Spurs. He averaged 9.7 points, 3.3 assists. Not bad. But I would say overall, the 90s bench was at least, if not better, than the 80s sixth man. The 90s West sixth man, better than the 80s West sixth man. I don't think there's any doubt about it. But, okay, let's get into something else. How about the All-Star Game, 1980? Oh, yeah, the 90s watered down. Well, in 1980, here's who the All-Stars were for the West. Marquez Johnson, good player, 5-time All-Star, 3 times All-NBA. He had some injuries, so he was on track for the Hall of Fame. Adrian Dantley, he's in the Hall of Fame. You got Kareem, he was the MVP that year. Magic Johnson, obviously he's a top 75, all-time great player. You had World B. Free, 1-time All-Star, 1-time All-NBA. Jack Sikma, he's in the Hall of Fame. Paul Westphal, he's in the Hall of Fame. Walter Davis is in the Hall of Fame. And Dennis Johnson is in the Hall of Fame. You had Kermit Washington, 1-time All-Star. Otis Birdsong, good player. He was a 4-time All-Star, 1-time All-NBA. Scott Wedman, 2-time All-Star. Okay, not bad. There's some decent names in there you probably remember. Well, let's look at the 1990 West All-Stars. They had Hakeem Olajuwon, okay, Magic Johnson, who was the MVP in 1990, James Worthy, John Stockton, and A.C. Green. That's your starting 5. You got 4 top 75 players as your starters. 1980, there was 2 on the whole West All-Stars, and they were on the same team, Kareem and Magic. Okay, let's keep going. On the bench, David Robinson, the Rookie of the Year in 1990. Ever heard of him? The Admiral? Fat Lever, very underrated player. 2-time All-Star, 1-time All-NBA. Tom Chambers, 4-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA. He even won an All-Star MVP. Rolando Blackman, 4-time All-Star. Clyde Drexler, top 75 player. Chris Mullin, Hall of Famer. Kevin Johnson, he was a 3-time All-Star, 5 times All-NBA, and I think he should be in the Hall of Fame if you let in Michael Cooper. And Rolando Blackman replaced Karl Malone. Karl Malone had an injury, didn't make it that year, but he was on the All-Star team. There's another top 75 player. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 top 75 players in 1990. In 1980, 2, and they're on the same team. So basically, you're playing no top 75 players in the entire Western Conference if you're the Lakers. That's insane. That's a joke. But the 90s is watered down though, right? Okay. Well, not only did they have 7 top 75 players, but they had additional Hall of Famer in Chris Mullin. That brings that total to 8. Now, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Hall of Fame players on the West. And, there were some good players in there, no doubt. But they weren't 1990 good. Not at all. Now, brings me to my final point. Are we still sticking with the 90? That's the year of double expansion. The 88-89 season was season number 1. 89-90 season was season number 2. Okay? So now you got 4 expansion teams in the previous 2 years. This should be the most watered down of the decade. Okay? That's why I picked it. Okay, so like I said, in 1980, the best teams were the Lakers, 60 wins, Seattle 56, Phoenix 55, Milwaukee 49. In 1990, it was the Lakers 63, Portland 59, San Antonio 56, and Utah 55. Every one of them is better. The top 4. Now I know what you're going to say. Oh, well, they got padded wins from beating up on the expansion teams. To a certain extent, that's true. However, let's take a look at this. The 1981 Lakers, okay? That's the year of expansion with the Dallas Mavericks. All right, sorry about that. So the year 1981, they expanded one team, the Dallas Mavericks. So the Lakers in 1981, they're the defending world champions, yada, yada. Magic had some injuries, blah, blah, blah. Their record was 54-28, right? Well, they were 5-0 against Dallas. So against non-expansion teams, they were 49-28. So if they would have just randomly played at the pace they were going, 49-28, they were on pace to win 52.2 games, okay? So they got padded 1.8 wins, okay? All right. Now, the 1990 Lakers, who against all 4 expansion teams, Charlotte, Minnesota, Orlando, and Miami, the record was 63-19. They were 11-1 against expansion, meaning they were 52-18 versus non-expansion. Okay? So if they just played non-expansion teams, they were on pace to win 60.9 wins. So they netted 2.1 wins because of expansion. Okay, fair enough. So you can round that up to 2 wins. But in 1981, the Lakers got padded 1.8 wins. So what's the difference? 1.8 or 2.1? A third of 3/10 of a win? That's what we're squabbling about here? Please, give me a break. No one has ever been able to give me a concise, coherent argument about the whole watered-down expansion team crap. I just went over the benches. I just went over the all-stars. And I just went over how expansion, for the same team, the Lakers, how it affected them in 1981 and in 1990. What effect did it have? Very marginal. So I just never believed this watered-down crap. Okay? All it did was it hit the pause button for these these franchise, not the pause button, but what it did was they just took them a few years to build up, to get, the good draft picks, the free agents, and all that kind of thing. Some were quicker than others. Miami was like 3-4 years or whatever. But all it really did was it gave these teams, 1 to 3 extra wins in the regular season. That's all it did. it didn't really affect much of anything. And by the mid to late 90s, the league was packed with great players. And I just showed you the 1980s West had 2 top 75 player All-Stars on the same team. That's it. On the whole All-Star team. 2 top 75 players. The 90s West had 7. You're going to tell me that's watered down versus the 1980? Please. I don't want to hear it. I'm uninterested in hearing it. Now, I didn't do the East because I wanted to use the exact correlation for the Lakers, because I knew that they played in the West for the expansion Dallas, world champions, all that stuff. They were 5-0 against Dallas. I mean, you're 5-0 or you're 11-1. Is that a big difference? I don't think so. So anyway, that's about all I got for this video. Again, if somebody can explain it to me, in a way I can understand, how was it watered down? I'd love to explain it. Other than getting a couple, 2, 3 more wins on your record for the regular season, what did it really affect? It looked like all these teams had a pretty good 6th man in 1990 in the West, didn't it? Better than 1980. So it didn't affect their if it affected their benches, then the team was just overflowing with riches, because their 6th man was better than the West 6th man of every team. So anyway, that's all I got for this video. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please hit the like button. And till next time.